talking about funnels, with specifically in the rut being a big part, where, you know, you say not all funnels are created equal.
Yeah.
You got soft-sided funnels, hard sided funnels, long range, short range, and then
two-sided, one-sided.
Yeah.
You can tighten two-sided. Man, if you want to dive into that, we got a lot of talking. You know, categorizing funnels, knowing which ones are significant and which ones are not is important. How to find them is important.
Which, not to interrupt, but I feel that there's probably, when people hear funnels, and you said specifically in your book, it's oftentimes you can't find one from a map, because I think e-scouting is a really big thing where people feel that they can look at a big chunk of timber or a big chunk of habitat and identify funnels. Do you think that's possible?
We've got during my first class, Joe wanted me to show on the topographics what the funnel looked like when we got there. He felt like that would be a big one because he'd been following his E-funnel stuff. Mm-hmm. And we got there and I said, show me the difference in this and any other place on this. He couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. He didn't do it. 1 or 2 out of 28, I think, 1 or 2.
So 28 identified funnels on a map.
No, identified funnels in the woods. You can find 2 on a map. Only 2 of them kind of shows up if you know what you're looking for. It's not like you think. You get in the woods and it's never like you imagine it by looking at a map or a funnel.
Is that different in farm country where there's like,
sure,
properties meet up and, you know, there's an inside corner or...
Yeah, or a strip of woods connecting to areas. Sure. Yeah. But in the big woods, we're talking about topographics.
Yep.
I'll tell you what I can find on the maps. I don't want to go where the topographical lines are just kind of evenly spaced and you know it's a flat and gradually getting tighter. And even when they're closer and wider and spreading out, that's a good start. But I like it where they're swirling, where there's lines going this way, then topographical lines come back around and here. That is the place on that property I'm going to first. That's where I'm going to find my funnels. There is so much things to consider, I guess, and prioritizing funnels. When I go to a new property, the tightest funnel I find, the most hard funnel that I can find on that whole property that is pulling the most deer through it. I call a place information gathering places. Sometimes there's a funnel so tight that 50% of the deer are moving through it. Through that whole property is going to that one spot, one tree. Trouble of it is most people just don't find them. And they don't, and a lot of people, they'll find them and they'll think maybe it's right, but they lack the confidence. And so they'll move on looking for something else because they've never been in the woods with somebody like me to show them where they can build that confidence up. Maybe they'll come back to it, maybe they won't. I like to look at I like a good hard funnel where several trails I can count come into it. Then if I can count, say you got 3 major trails coming to it and you back up on them 3 trails and there's 2 feeder trails coming in to make this trail a main trail. I'm not talking about deer feeder. I'm talking about smaller trails coming into it and making a heavier trail and then heavier trail. And then the main trail, or sometimes there's 2. Sometimes a ditch funnel fades out a little bit right at the top and you got some of them cutting the corner a little, shortcut, and some of them going around. But I like to look at how deep they are and how well worn. And then I like to count the trails coming into it too. So, but keep in mind that a trail out in the woods, a heavy trail in the woods don't mean anything. But the trail out in the woods that is heavy because deer are forced onto it because they're going around some kind of restriction means everything. The same thing that is funneling does on it all year will funnel the bucks on when they get to going hard, where they're forced to be. But number 1 is the amount of deer that funnel is carrying, the amount of deer that is forced to be there. More and more trails come together, force more and more deer to be there. That's number 1.
So you mentioned the importance of the biggest constriction on a farm or a parcel or a piece of ground being one of the most important things. The spot where 50% of the deer may go through a spot. What about the faint trails where people talk about, there's doe trails and buck trails that are more faint?
I could see where that's the case when the bucks are on a pattern. For instance, if a family group of 5 does go down a trail every day, it will be heavier. And just say a mature buck goes down this trail every day, then that's 1 compared to 5. It could be 5 times heavier. There's some logic to that. There's a lot of other things you hear that ain't got no logic to it, but there's some logic to that. If that trail has mature buck sign on it, then I'd be interested in putting a camera on it, but I wouldn't want to hunt that single faint trail. Sometimes there's a faint that he don't come through once every 2 or 3 weeks, and half of that might be at night, even during the right time. So I want to hunt where I follow that on down to where it joins another one of his trails, and then maybe where it goes down what I call a short range funnel. It goes around the pond and 2 more of his travel corridors come together, and now it's all of a sudden heavy. Or where his trail is forced because of a ditch or a fence or some kind of short range funnel into the doe's trail also. And then maybe another trail on the other side of the doe trail come on. I want to cover as many corridors as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. His don't necessarily, if I'm hunting him in that stage, that number 1 way I hunt, when I'm hunting his pattern, I don't have to necessarily have a funnel to hunt him there. I'm going to hunt his sign. I'm going to monitor his scrapes. Used to, I'd monitor them. Now I use a camera. Used to, I'd go in there and evaluate his scrapes pretty often in a way that was non-threatening to him. Anymore, I got to use a camera. But that is a different situation. That is a pattern when he's patternable. It's not when he, after November 3rd, when they're going everywhere, running all over the woods trying to find that first hot doe, and they don't care where they're going. They're going from one patch of woods to another, or they know where these family groups of does are. During the fall, while they was at night going around and leaving their sign in these family groups of does, they had a specific way to go where they were in cover and this and that. When that woods get to smelling sweet, and all of a sudden now they're going to go the shortest route. I don't care if it's across the interstate or a field or whatever. They're going. Yeah. They're maximizing their time.
You know, all funnels are not created equal. So when I was reading that book, I was thinking of potential funnels where I have stands now, and you know, in the book, there's 18 questions to ask when it comes to a funnel. How does a dummy like me go find a new funnel this summer?
It don't hurt to look at the topographical map and find where there's the most diversity in topographical lines. Mm-hmm. You ain't gonna find a funnel like it, but go to that area. Cut a deer trail. Find a deer trail, follow it. 1 or 2 things are going to happen. If you're in a mountainous terrain where there's a lot of topographics, either that trail is going to get fainter and fade out, or it's going to get heavier. If it gets heavier, you're picking up deer. Keep following it. If it gets heavier again, you're picking up deer, and you're picking up deer because they're fixing to go around something. If it starts getting fainter, turn around and go the opposite direction on it. It may fade out too. Then you go to the next trail. I like to cut deer trails and follow them. And you'll learn a whole lot by that. You can also in the snow count the number of tracks. I'll cut a deer track in the snow in a place I want to find a funnel and follow it. It's going to lead you through funnels. During any day movement of a deer, he's going to be utilizing a funnel. He's going to be going around something that's going to put him in contact with other deer that's doing the same thing as he is. Mm-hmm. So I would advise you to go to where there is a lot of topographics and then find the deer trail and walk it. And then you'll find that deer is going to converse that terrain the same way you're going to converse it to save energy. Now, if you let's say I've got a 14-year-old kid, or I used to have my boys, AJ and Ray, and play with me, and I'd go around a little easier. I'd stay on the level ground to go around the ditch where they might run down in and back right up back the other side. You know, but these older bucks, when they get arthritis in their hips and they're going for miles and hours, they get sore, they're going to stay on the level ground as much as possible. I noticed when me and Joe Miles first went scouting a place, he's going right down in the ditch and back out. You know, he wasn't going around a long way around. And then after about 3 or 4 hours, guess what? He was doing the same thing I was doing. So the longer that rut goes on and the more these deer move and the sore they get, the more they're going to stay on level ground instead of going down in ditches and back. And it ain't just deer. It's coyotes, everything in the woods utilizes terrain features. Some funnels are a lot more significant than others. The first thing I look for is the one carrying the most deer on that whole property. That's going to be my first pick. The next one is the one carrying the most deer that has big sign. The funnel with a lot of big sign is probably in the mature buck's core area. Mm-hmm. That may be where you can kill him while he's still on his pattern once he pulls into daylight because of the pending rut. Because deer traveling from November 3rd until the end of November, going hard looking for that next hot doe or the first hot doe, not going to be pissy putting around, standing there making a lot of sign. Only if he's with a doe in heat, he will be, because he'll be bored entertaining himself until she's receptive, if he's with a doe coming in. And a lot of times the funnel ain't kind of, the top of rabbits are steep and odd and irregular, and there's not a good opportunity for a buck just stand there and make rubs and scrapes anyway. But if you find a lot of big rubs and scrapes in a good tight funnel, then you probably got two things. You probably got opportunity to hunt a deer on his movement pattern in his core area, and also long range if it's carrying enough deer. A deer that's going from point A to point B during the rut, maybe never been through that particular place in his life, but when he hits a ditch, he goes around it. Or when he hits a good trail that's getting heavier, he'll get on that trail and go. Two reasons. Number one is he knows that's the best topographics to be on to converse the terrain. And number two is his best chances to find a hot doe. That's why I often make mineral licks in a place that's not real tight to enhance the trail systems coming into it during the winter. Of course, you're not hunting minerals in the winter, but you're hunting the trail systems that's coming through. Mm-hmm. There's ways to make funnels, too, if there's not a great funnel there.
How do you do that? You can guess some of the obvious. Maybe you fell a couple trees. If you own the ground, maybe you put up a short fence. What are some other things that help to create a funnel?
Yeah.
Or even, you talked about enhancing funnels too, or having a mock scrape at your stand locations too, to have more opportunity.
I always do that, of course.
Yeah.
Let's just say you're hunting flat terrain in Alabama. There's no funnels. Start out where most of the buck sign is, or the most deer sign is, the heaviest trail. And that's usually going to be on an edge. Say you can only hunt 60 acres and over here is where most deer are. So you can't do that. But you can find an edge where you're hunting. A thicket breaks off into open woods, or a pines breaks off into hardwood, some kind of edge. Deer are creatures of edge. Find that edge and then set it up for yourself. Don't just start making mock scrapes and putting mineral licks out anywhere. Walk back and forth on that edge and find the right tree. Back when I was young, I'd set up the perfect place you ever seen in your life, and I'd look and there wasn't even a tree worth getting in. Boy, I was from Missouri back then, I had experience, had to show me everything. I couldn't figure it out, but you might go up and down that edge and make sure. And I like two trees opposite each other. Say the edge is here and there's a tree here, I can put a stand in, and good in here, I can put a stand in. And then that's what I really want. So if the wind changes, I can just hop right across. So you can put a cross fence. I don't want to sit there and look at a fence. I don't like to look at the hand of man when I'm hunting. Of course, if you saw some trees, it's the same way, kind of, but at least it's trees you're looking at instead of a fence. I want to make everything. I want to restrict deer every way I can, not to go where I don't want them, and I want to do things that enhance them coming here. So I can hinge cut, and if you're not allowed to cut and manage there, you can pull in brush, block off as far as you can in both directions where they can't get behind your tree, and where that will encourage them to come to where it's easiest. Then make this path real easy. Put a mineral lick there, or some kind of attractant through the summer where they're forming a trail system through there. And not only are they forming a trail system through there, they're getting used to going that route. Say they're wanting to go to point B over here, and normally they'd go through here, but now they can they start going this way because they're going to Mineral Leak then on over there. And they'll get used to going through there, and they're more comfortable there. And buck and rut hits one of them trails that was formed because, say, a Mineral Leak was there, then he's liable to fall it right in. And then make a good mock scrape there. They might come through at night, bucks might be in, finding that mock scrape, and then next time they're in the area in the daytime, they might come through there and check it. So just learn to think about stuff like that, and there's ways to do it if you don't have any terrain features of funnel deer.
You brought up a pretty interesting point, but having two setups for the particular funnel, the best spot or the highest probability location for a mature buck to go through during the rut, and having two stands there. I feel like that's I personally have not done that.
Well, if you got two stand sites, one on each side, let's say southwest wind blows across the trail, or kind of the way the deer are coming down the trail. So you got a southwest wind for a week during a good time a year to hunt him, you can't hunt. But this trail on the other side would just miss them, see. So what that does is increases the amount of time you can hunt that spot. And if there's high and low ground, then topographics, then the thermals in the evening, you'd have to be over here in this stand, the morning over here, of course. So that will just allow you more time in that stand by doing that.